Imagine you're a chess prodigy. At the age of 9, you're catapulted as a world sensation, your father making a book about you, searching for Bobby Fischer, and your whole entire life is known to be about chess. What do? You continue to rise above the ranks, continue to grow higher and higher and higher, but then life struggles take a toll on you and you don't know what to do. This is about the person called Josh Waitzkin and how he dispelled his dislike for chess and transformed himself into a Tai Chi master as well, becoming a master of both the mind and the soul. This is part of a new series that I'm doing where I read books and I review them and I talk about them because I think they're interesting. So I just want to give a quick summary of how I read this book a while ago. It was good. I read it in about a couple of weeks, like 1 or 2 weeks, and this is actually the second book that I've read since I started reading again. It was a good book. It was more of an autobiography about the person. There were a lot of things that you can take from the book, which I'm going to talk about now, but a lot of it was talking about the autobiography aspect of the book as well. The first thing that I would say is, whenever you're mastering a new fundamental skill, you have to learn how to have fun first, and from having fun, you're going to be able to learn new things within that much more easily because it's not seeming like a drag and it's not seeming like a chore. Of course everybody knows it, but it is a good reminder to have, especially when you are taking things way too seriously. Another lesson from this book is that losing does not mean the end of the world. When this person lost a very, very major championship at the age of 9, of course he was a kid, of course he's going to feel very, very sad, but one of the main takeaways from this book is actually don't shut off from your emotions just because you have to be thinking about every single day, how can I improve? Even if you lose a major championship or if you lose a major tournament, that doesn't mean that you can't feel the emotions of sadness, sorrow, teary-eyed, all that stuff. You can feel that, but at the same time, you have to always think about how you can improve. So afterwards, then you can think about what did I do wrong, what could I have done to do better, what did the opponent do to get better of me, stuff like that. In this book, he explores about how that journey of constant pursuit of getting better and better, he was getting tired of it. And at the end, he explored something new to take his mind off chess, which is Tai Chi, which we'll get into later in this video. You can always have another chance. The only time that you actually truly lose is when you give up. Another thing that he talks about is, especially when he was training with his mentor for these chess tournaments, is that he became so narrow-minded and so focused on chess that he didn't have time to relax. So taking breaks is a part of your journey to becoming better at stuff as well. If you're too narrow-minded and too stressed and you're too focused on the subject at hand, oftentimes you sort of get tunnel vision. You lose sight of the broader aspect. So taking breaks as well is a good idea, and a good indicator of how you can notice yourself becoming too narrow-minded is if you think about it, then of course that's an aspect of you becoming too focused on it. Because it's not a part of the book, but it's another aspect that I just thought about right now. Your brain has two modes, active mode and diffuse mode. Active mode is when you're actively thinking about the subject at hand. Diffuse mode is when you put that subject into the background, when you put that idea, you put that thought into the background and you let your brain work on it over time. Oftentimes a lot of these scientists or people who invent stuff or people who think about very, very good things, they have those ideas when they're not focusing on the subject. They let their brain work on the subject, they put the active mode into it, and then after they finish working on the subject, they begin to go into diffuse mode, and whilst they're thinking about that subject in the background, then they get the answer come to them like that. This same rule applies to getting better at whatever mental skill that you want to, be it chess, your subjects, or something else. Work on it for a while and then take a break, then over time your brain will be in diffuse mode and will work out the answer sooner or later. Ways that you can relax, recuperate and build yourself back up again after you've been focusing on something for a long time can include taking a hike, taking a walk, reconnecting with your family and loved ones and friends, cooking, something relaxing, nothing too strenuous, nothing too mentally taxing. Of course, this is only probably going to apply for mental, but there's also a lot of this stuff carries over to physical as well. It's the same thing, if you were to train for 2 hours, you wouldn't want to rest by training even more. It doesn't make any sense. The same way that your brain, when it's actively exercising, it doesn't need to rest by doing more mental exercises. It can only rest by just properly relaxing, not thinking about anything too strenuous. This book at the beginning also talks about how the more serious challenges that you face, where it's you against somebody else, the more sort of hero and villain it becomes, where you are the hero, you're the protagonist in your own story, and the person across you is the antagonist, but to them, they're the protagonist, and the person who is yourself is the antagonist. So no matter who wins and who loses, there is going to be a winner and a loser. So not everybody can truly be satisfied because everybody wants to win, but there can only be one winner. So he talks about how it is indeed a cruel world and it is only up to us to continue to choose whether we want to continue or to give up. But he says that if for those that continue, there's two paths and that arises. Either you're going to win or you're going to lose. for those that play the game. One really interesting aspect that I found about in this book is the idea of entity and incremental theorists. So this is when about the time that he was young, and he was often influenced by maybe things in his surroundings. And this goes into how we can sort of influence people younger than us in order to help them do better in life, in their life. And entity incremental theorists, this goes sort of links to the idea of a like open or closed mind. For those of you who are in school, you may have heard this is about talking about the fixed and open mindset. This is links heavily to entity and incremental theorists, in my opinion. And entity theorists are kids who have been influenced by their parents and teachers to think in such a manner. For example, they attribute their success or failure to how smart somebody is. So like to an ingrained and unalterable level of ability, meaning that, for example, if I tell you, oh wow, you got first place, you got success, congratulations, it's because you were so smart. That leads you to believe that, oh, it's only because I'm smart at this particular subject did I get first place in it. Meaning that for other subjects which I'm not smart at, I'm not going to get good at, because if I'm not smart at it, then how can I do good in that subject? But the only logical issue is with that, does it start at the person being bad at the subject, or does it start at the person failing at the subject? Because let me just give you an idea what I'm talking about. Imagine I'm not very good at English. I'm not very good at English, but let's just go with it anyways. I'm not very good at English, and I take an English test and I flunk it and I fail it. Was it me being bad at English that caused me to fail, or was it me failing that leads people to think that I'm bad at English? Which one does it start at? That's a major flaw in the entity theorists' mindset. The incremental theorists, on the other hand, suggests that the level of success that you attain is not linked to some unalterable, oh, I got this because I'm smart at it sort of thing. It's linked to progressive sort of growth mindset, where I did good in this because of the hard work and effort that I put in. I did good in this because of the amount of reps that I did behind the scenes when nobody was looking. I did good in this because it was me at the end of the day who allowed me to get success. And this idea has been shown to, when you tell kids, oh, you did really good, not because you're smart, but because you worked hard in it and you really pushed yourself, then you were able to do good in that exam. It shows that kids are much more open to new ideas, new subjects, new theories, and it allows them to become much more, they end up becoming much more colloquial terms, smarter down the line, because they've been told that it's not their skill, like their inherent unchanged skill that got them to where they are in their early life. It was because they worked on it. And if you can work on it when you're younger, you can work on it when you're older, and you can work on it in any skill at all. So if I were to sum this up, it would be everything is a skill, and if anything is a skill, that means you can work on it and you can train on it. And nothing happens because of you were just inherently talented like that. Of course, there are going to be people like that who are just so talented that they don't really have to train as much. But at the end of the day, you do have to train. It's not that there's nobody who is just going to be born with like a PhD level knowledge in maths, is there? So it's the same thing applies to here. No matter how talented you are, talent only is the amount of times you have to get something wrong before you can get it right. Super talented people may only need to learn it once and then they're able to do it, but they still have to learn it. Do you see what I mean? The idea is if you can remove the amount of times that you need to do the number of repetitions, then at the end of the day, that's where true success lies. Because it's not about the grade, or it's not about attributing yourself to being I'm smart, I'm dumb. It's about how many times you can get back up again and do the reps and incrementally continue to grow until you are able to be at the level that you want to be. So I think a really good exercise is for you that you could think about right now is for you to pause the video and think, am I an entity theorist or am I an incremental theorist? And it's not that you just have to be a straight out entity or incremental theorist. You can be a different one in different subjects. For example, in maths, I might be an incremental theorist, but in English, I might be an entity theorist. Which sort of aspects or fields or disciplines in your life do you think, oh, I can't get any better at that because I'm just bad at that thing? Then that means you're an entity theorist. And which subjects do you have the idea of, or the sense of modality of, oh, if I approach it in this way, or it's just, I just have to learn this skills in order for me to become better at that subject, and those skills, we can train them individually and then put them together and become better. that's the whole entire idea of an incremental theorist. So if your sense of modality is like that in a particular subject, for example mathematics, then you're an incremental theorist in that field. Whereas if you were what I said previously, then you're an entity theorist in that field. And I was reading this book, there were questions that I had about entity and incremental theorists. This book didn't get into it too much because it moved into other things that I'll talk about later. But there were some things that I want to share with you, some questions that I had. How does one switch from an entity to an incremental theorist? Although I can think of ideas about how one can do this. Is there any like research, any sort of papers that show like valid proof of what sort of phrasing? Because phrasing and the sort of things that we say to other people becomes very important. Although it may seem like a simple sentence or two maybe will do no harm, but over time people will say the same thing over and over and over again. It's sort of like a self-feedback loop. And at the end of the day, it's not going to guard the person. It's just going to mentally change. It's going to mentally change the frame at which the person is thinking. So in that sense, it's like you have to be really careful with the words that you choose. So instead of saying, oh, you did this because you're smart at it, say, oh, you did good at this because you worked really hard at it. It may seem like a small change, but that's good. That's what's going to end up people thinking, oh, I'm just good at this. I'm good at this because I worked hard at it. Other question that I had is, because this book talks about how you can raise your child to become an incremental theorist, how does one raise up a child to become an incremental theorist, like from the get-go, like from birth? Another question I had is, how can I make sure one does not become an entity theorist? Like what sort of barriers or preventions can I do to make sure that this isn't the case? And another question that I had, which this book actually did answer, what are some of the signs that one is an incremental theorist or one is an entity theorist? And I already said these signs. If they say that things that like, I am smart, I am bad, I am dumb, they lose confidence in themselves when they get a bad mark in something, or when they're facing difficulty in that skill. This book talks about an experiment, a social experiment that they did with kids. They gave people really, really easy tasks, and then afterwards faced them with very difficult tasks. And then those kids they had a low sense of morality because they thought they were smart at it. If the people that had difficult tasks straight away, they just worked on it for longer and they were able to solve the tasks in the end. Or they felt like they were not stuck in it because they weren't smart. They felt like they were stuck in it just because they just needed more time in order to figure out the answer. Similarly, signs that somebody's an incremental theorist is that they say, oh, I got this because I worked hard at it, or I should have tried harder. They become excited when faced with difficulty, with hard challenges, and they invite challenge instead of becoming discouraged by it. That's just the entity and incremental theory section wrapped up. Now let's talk about more of the book. Josh Waitzkin talks about how being able to seek out wisdom from every single loss, from every single defeat, and even from every single win. What lessons can I take from this? And then acting on those lessons. You can't just think about what lessons can I take from this, you have to act on them as well. That's what ultimately separates us from the rest of the pack. Another tip that I like to add, just going back to the entity theorist sort of thing, is that relying on memorization often leads to somebody becoming an entity theorist. So if you're someone who memorizes stuff a lot, then that may be a sign that you might be an entity theorist. This book talks about also how to get into the flow state in chapter 5. Chapter 6 talks about how you can stay calm, relocating yourself and focusing again, even after making a critical error or mistake, usually leads you to panicking. Chapter 8 talks about how your ambition can be great when you're younger and more childlike, but extremely dangerous when you have everything to lose as you get older. You have to always treat your skill like a plaything, like a child, because if you let your fear of ambition inhibit you, that's a problem. You have to always continue to explore and play around with the skill that you have instead of be focusing on it becoming too boring, dull and fundamental. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video here. That's my sort of mini summary review about this book. I wasn't able to get everything that I wanted to say done, but I think this may be a good place to stop at. I have to go in like 10 minutes anyways. I had to rush this recording. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Tell me if you want me to make more books. This isn't the first book that I read. As I said, this is the second book that I read. The first book that I read in a long time is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. So yeah, if you want me to make a video about that, then I can do. But apart from that, I shall see you next time. Goodbye.